So good morning, everyone, again, or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in. Thank you for joining us for a Sign Association of Canada's Breaking Barriers webinar titled The Workplace Shift Before, During, and After COVID. Today's session is being recorded and will be available to all of the attendees here and also to our members after the fact. My name is Corinne Eaton. I'm the Executive Director of Sign Association of Canada. I am joined here by my colleague, Hilary Pafru. So on your screen, dressed in red, she's our Events and Meetings Manager, and she will be in charge of the Zoom magic, as I call it. But really, what it amounts to, she will be fielding your questions in Q&A, and she will be running the polls for us and helping out with any technical stuff. Or if I were to disappear, she will take over for me, as my Zoom does also Zoom magic. So before we begin, I will take you through a few of our upcoming events and the things that I want you to know about, or our association wants you to know about. So as a member, you are a member of a multi-dimensional association. So that means you're a member of your chapter or region. So wherever you are in Canada, you are a member of the Sign Association of Canada. And if you are a sign manufacturer, so we call you a Class 1 member, you're also the member of International Sign Association. So all of the benefits and the events that all these three levels associations do are available to you. So one thing that I would like you to know about is, as part of our mission to provide services and benefits that enhance the value of your membership, we are excited to announce a new member portal. So it's actually, for us, it's a new membership database. For you, it's a new member portal. Do check it out. Every member has a login. Why we recommend that you check it out is because we also have a member directory. We get a lot of calls from end users and other sign companies looking for sign companies across Canada. So it's critical that you go into your member portal, check out your company, your profile, and make sure that it's up to date. So look at the specialize in. Does it show all of the things that you specialize in? Is that indicated there? Because that is how the end users and other sign companies will find you. And also upload your logo, because that's visible in the directory. Okay, so I've told you about the member portal. Next thing, events. We have an awesome upcoming event that is being hosted by the Ontario Sign Association. It is the virtual poker night. We focus on a lot of serious stuff, and so Ontario Sign Association wanted to do a virtual, like, lighthearted networking event. So they start with networking from 6 to 7, and then it's going to be the tournament. It is open to all members, so please do check them out. You can go onto their website or connect with Hilary, and she will help you register. Then another set of upcoming events that I want to mention by ISA, December the 1st, Economic Outlook for the auto sector, or auto care sector. So they've already done sessions on the hotel sector and the restaurant sector. So now it's the auto care sector. So if that is the sector that you focus on, do check it out. I do highly recommend. And another session, December 8th to 9th, is the Link Soft Signage Virtual. Last week, ISA had their virtual wrap session, also 2-day event. More than 2,000 attendees attended from across the world. So Canada, US, Europe, Australia. It was a huge hit with panel discussions and networking and demonstrations. So this one is going to be about soft signage. If you at all focus on it or think about going into soft signage, do attend it. It's free to attend, and it's put on by industry kind of specialists, so why not? All right, so now moving on to breaking barriers. We have a fantastic and a dedicated task force for our Breaking Barriers group, who is behind all of the topics that we put on and coming up with the session material. Our mission statement is, by creating a network through coaching, education, and mentorship, we inspire and empower women in their ever-changing roles in the Canadian sign and graphics industry. So, in the spirit of providing education and mentorship, and in the spirit of inspiring and empowering, I want to move on ahead to our session today, where we're going to discuss the workplace shift. Where do we start? Since March 2020, the coronavirus pandemic has forced organizations to fundamentally change their operations. And remote work has become more prevalent and is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Multiple studies predict that this could be the beginning of a huge shift in the way we work, with enormous implications. But how does this affect our industry? While some workers have been able to shift to remote work, others, due to the very nature of their work, haven't. So while only time will tell how this is going to play out in the long term, we want to discuss the now. What has worked, what hasn't, and what could be improved upon. So I'm joined by 4 esteemed panelists here. Stacy Gagne, and I'm going in alpha by last name. Stacy Gagne, she is Business Development Manager with Sinex Manufacturing. Elizabeth Jensen, she's Manufacturing Specialist at Gemini Signs Product. Svetlana Lavant, President of Permit World, and Nadia Palmerini, Chief Financial Officer of Pattison Sign Group. Before I go and start asking questions, I wanted to set the stage also for our discussion. One of our objectives, and indeed the value that associations bring to the members, is that we are looking to establish a network of people who are living your reality. So each of our panelists was selected because of their role within their organization, the size of the company they work in, and their experiences during this whole COVID. And we want to ensure that our audience, wherever you are, that you can relate and hopefully take something with you after today's session. And to ensure that we're conversing actively with our attendees and to get a temperature check about our collective experiences, we will be utilizing polls. The polls are anonymous, so you can really, we cannot track back who said what. So here's our first poll question. We want to know, where are you located? Where are you connecting with us? With today, we're gonna give it, Hillary, how long are we gonna give it, just so that I know?
We can stop it whenever we've got all of the votes, or as many as we think we're gonna get. We are at 24 out of 31 voted.
Okay, great. And we will show the results, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So, okay, I think we have almost everybody has voted. Great. So it's not a trick question. There are no winners. All right. So I think at 40 seconds, I think we have everybody almost captured. So let's end the poll and let's show the results. All right. So right now, out of the people who did respond, a predominance of 54% are calling in from Ontario. We also have representation from Quebec, La Belle Provence. Bonjour. We have BC here as well, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and our Atlantic provinces. Did I miss anybody? No. All right, great. So we have some representation from everywhere and Ontario as well. Okay, great. So, see, that was easy. So we can end the poll. It wasn't painful. Okay, so we want our audience to feel free to ask questions. So you do see that there is a Q&A at the bottom. So if you have a question that comes up during or in response to something that the panelists said, please do ask it, and Hillary is going to read out the question as well. And after the sessions, we are going to mention during the session some of the resources. After the session is done, we are going to send a video link as well as the list of resources that were mentioned. Okay, so let's, without further ado, let's start. To start with, just so that our audience has a better understanding, I have just only mentioned your names and companies, but I would love for each of the panelists to introduce themselves and to give a high-level overview of who you are, what you do, what your company specializes in, and whether you stayed remote, at work, or somewhere in between. And Stacy, we'll start with you just because we're going by last name in alpha order.
Absolutely. So I am Stacy Gagne. I am the Business Development Manager at Sinex Manufacturing. We are located in Manitoba. I have been with the company for 10 years now, and we kind of specialize in both exterior and interior signage packages. So a little bit of everything, which is nice. In March, we transitioned to our office staff working from home. In the beginning, we were very fortunate in Manitoba. We did not have a lot of cases, so it didn't take long, and then we were slowly transitioning people back into the office. Our shop was able to remain open, as well as our installation crew, just following the guidelines and proper distancing, and we were able to continue almost as normal. In summer, we were back in the office working pretty much very freely, still kind of following guidelines and restrictions, but not really having to think about it as much, because in Manitoba, we were privileged at that time that we didn't have a lot of cases. Come September, that totally changed for us. Right now in Manitoba, we are not looking good at all. We all kind of resorted back to working at home. We are working remotely. Cases are definitely a big concern. There's a lot going on. We've had cases in our office. We've had to kind of navigate that. So right now we are all at home, hoping for the best, wanting to make sure everyone keeps safe. We are able to, again, to maintain working. It's just looking differently, and we'll continue to just adjust based on the situation that we're in going forward.
All right. Thanks, Stacey. So a bit of both, remote and work and back, and yeah. I think that's going to be the nature of this discussion. It's like nothing is static. All right, Elizabeth, on to you. You're muted.
You're on mute.
See, I told you I was going to forget that. I'm Elizabeth. Try again. I'm with Gemini Canada. Gemini is a manufacturer of custom signage. We're located in a village, small village of Newstead, Ontario. So we're about 2.5 hours north of Toronto. We have 45 employees in 2 different buildings on site here. We have about 45,000 square feet of production and office space. My role at Gemini, I've been here for almost 15 years. So my first 11 years I was in shipping. Now I do material handling, so moving product between the buildings, and I do all of the purchasing for our Canadian site. I also do trade show setup, part of the team with trade show logistics, all of that kind of thing. And I've recently been promoted to a production lead in our second building. So since early March, I've been on site working in the on the floor once the government of Ontario put in the mandatory shutdown of everything, all the businesses except for essential services. I was on the floor shipping face masks, face shields, that sort of thing, looking after purchasing and sourcing things that we need to be able to produce them, and for sourcing cleaning supplies and PPE for our own workers. With being in a leadership role, I've been quite involved in implementing and communication of many of the policies that we've had to put in place related to the COVID from our local government and our corporate offices.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Svetlana, on to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining and giving us the opportunity to share our experience. I'm Svetlana Levant. I'm the president and founder of Permit World. Our company is located in Waterloo, Ontario, and we have 5 employees. We've been in business for 14 years now, and our company specializes in sign permits across Canada. We actually have fully transitioned to work remotely from home, and we started that transition in March and completed it in April. So at this point, unfortunately, cases in Waterloo are trending upwards. So we're looking probably to stay working remotely until end of next summer. And obviously it will depend on how the trajectory goes. So that's my story.
Thanks, Svetlana. Well, I'm looking forward to getting more in depth there. Okay, so Nadia Palmerini, last but not least.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Corinne. Thanks for taking the time out of everyone's busy schedule to join us for this important discussion. As Corinne already introduced me, my name is Nadia Palmerini. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Pattison Sign Group. A bit about me, I've been with Pattison Sign Group for almost 5 years now, so pretty new to the sign industry. A bit about Pattison. Pattison has over 600 employees across Canada and the US. We have 3 manufacturing plants, 2 in Canada and 1 in the US. We specialize in exterior and interior signage, digital signage, maintenance, and lease offerings. I'm currently working out of our corporate office today, which is in Scarborough, Ontario. And since the pandemic, I personally have been physically in the office 1 to 2 days per week. And the rest of the week I work remotely from my home just north of Toronto. My team, I'm on the support side, so my team consists of approximately 70 employees in various accounting functions, continuous improvement, IT. I'm fortunate enough to have the IT team during a pandemic, leasing and payroll teams. So we were fortunate enough that we had the IT tools to work from home even before the pandemic, but very few of our employees chose to do so. So when the lockdown was declared in Ontario, we were forced to work, obviously, to work remotely, and we really didn't have any disruption for our salaried staff to work from home. With the exception of a couple of weeks, our plants continued to stay open following the various health and safety protocols. In July, when the lockdown was lifted in Ontario, very few of our office staff returned to work. So we have approximately 98% of our office staff that continued to work remotely. Feedback from our employees is that, it's due to various reasons, such as commuting, fear on public transit, fear and anxiety surrounding the disease. There's homeschooling challenges, childcare challenges, caregiver challenges, and, some employees have actually said they're actually more productive from working from home. So that's been our experience up until now. Turn it back to Corinne.
All right, thank you, Nadia. So we have a full gamut of here. So just working from home, working on location, and in between. So very interesting. So now we want to find out about our audience. And we're going to launch our next poll. And it says, in the last 8 months, so I guess 8 to 9 months, have you been working predominantly remotely at the office, or both? We'll give it also, again, like about 30 seconds. Again, we can't see who's saying what, so we just only we'll see the results, which we'll share with everyone.
That's almost everyone. We've got 27
All right,
out of
okay,
30.
so let's end the poll. Okay, so it's even.
Wow.
So we have 48% remotely, 48% again at the office sign shop plant, and then 4% to both. So very even in distribution. And again, I think it's very indicative of also of our industry, and depends on what the function of your work. Okay, interesting, great data. Okay, so let's now start with the meat and potatoes, the questions that we want to delve in. Off this, I'm gonna close the poll on my screen. Okay, and so Elizabeth, the first question is gonna be for you. Sorry to put you on the spot. So you have been at the plant throughout the past 9 months. In your opinion, what policies or considerations do you feel are necessary to support in-person workers? And also, because you were there implementing them, talk me through some of the policies you specifically implemented at Gemini.
Okay, thank you. The number one consideration for us was keeping our staff safe. We spent a lot of time doing reminders about best practices, reviewing our COVID safety measures. We do a morning kickoff meeting where we'll review and do a reminder to give employees the opportunities to speak to any issues that they have pertaining to anything that's going on, or even making suggestions that they feel may be helpful to keep us all safe. Safety and prevention is the driving force for the policies that we implemented. A few of the ones that we did, we chose to implement a mandatory mask wearing policy in March, long before it was mandatory for our region. We wanted to be on the forefront of that, so implementing that was a very good starting point for us. So all of our employees must wear a mask or face shield anywhere in the plant. When they're at their workstation or in any common areas, you need to be wearing a mask. We also do temperature screening for everybody when they come in the door, and they have to do a COVID questionnaire. So answering questions, do you have symptoms? Have you been in contact with anybody? that has to be completed before anybody enters the facility. So we're just trying to keep anybody that may have symptoms, you know, out of the building completely. We've developed a rigorous cleaning schedule, which I'm sure everybody has, but all of our employees are part of this. This gives everybody, each person, the ownership and being part of the diligence needed to maintain the safety of themselves and their coworkers. And the thing that we try to get across, you know, to put it into perspective, is think about it's your day to clean. You know, you kind of go through the motions. You're thinking, okay, I have all this other stuff to do, but you know, it's my turn to do my cleaning. But think about if it's, you know, a few hours later, you hear one of your coworkers went home, they weren't feeling well. You know, do you think what you did was enough to keep everybody else safe? So just trying to reinforce that in people's minds to be diligent when they're doing their cleaning. Our usual production shifts at Gemini run from 7 till 3:30. So we implemented a staggered schedule. So some people would start earlier, some would start later. We stagger our lunch times and our breaks. We installed barriers in our lunchrooms just so that we could keep our social distancing. We also had people working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and others working Tuesday, Thursday, and some of our day shift went to afternoon shift. So just once again, trying to keep this limited number of people, but still, you know, keeping production flowing. So another thing we had to do to keep the production flowing while adhering to the safety guidelines is we put tape on the floors. So just taping off areas where, you know, 6 feet, you're in this area. If I'm in this area, you can't enter this area, that sort of thing. And we did a lot of signage as well with, you know, it might be just a sign that says, remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, you know, keep your social distancing. And one thing we found worked really well is we changed up our signs. So after a couple months of having it, we just switched them out, changed the color, changed the font. Anything that kind of draws your eye to it again, because you get complacent. It's the same thing all the time. You're looking at it, you're not really paying attention. So even just changing that color or the font, it really makes you look at it again and say, oh, okay, you know, this is a good reminder for myself that I need to continue up my diligence and make sure I'm doing what I need to do. And we follow the news constantly. So anytime there is possibility of a new shift in a requirement that may be coming, we implemented it right away. Because we found if you're trying to do too many implementations all at once, it gets really hard. It's a burden, you know, it's hard to get everybody to follow it. So as soon as we heard something might be coming down, we put that into play right away. And then just early on, there was so much uncertainty of what was required for businesses, we relied on the Government of Ontario and the Ministry of Labour and our local health units for guidance. We also reached out to other manufacturers in the sign industry just to confirm, you know, what are you doing or what's working for you? And, you know, there's a lot of information to try and get through to see what works for everybody else. So it was very important to share the knowledge, as no one had it all figured out. We just had to kind of take the information that we had and use those guidelines to apply it to our situation. So, you know, one size doesn't fit all. You kind of got to make it work for what you're doing. And we're glad. We think that we have the confidence and the credibility that our processes we've put into place have worked. Knock on wood, we haven't had any cases here. So I think everything that we've done has worked well for us.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. So, you know, being proactive, changing up even sign colors, that's a great takeaway. And yeah, lots of good food for thought. Nadia, I'm going to move over to you. Pattison is the largest sign company here in Canada, with a lot of teams across Canada, and imagine also a lot of moving parts. So how did your organization adjust to working remotely, and what was key?
Yeah, so thanks, Corinne. Back in March when this all started, honestly, we didn't know what to expect. We had the Canadian government taking more of a proactive approach back then and to the pandemic versus the measures that were taken in the US. So we were kind of split and divided. We decided back then the number one, and to this day, the number one priority was the health and well-being of all of our employees. And although we were technically labeled an essential service, we decided to shut down our plants, both in Canada and the US, for a couple of weeks, as well as our offices. So, you know, this allowed us to basically to switch gears and focused on enhanced health and safety protocols within our plants and offices and adhere to all the government restrictions. So many of the things that Elizabeth already mentioned. In the early days, we were also dealing with a lot of uncertainty, safety of the employees, how we're going to make this work from home actually work, anxiety over the pandemic, fear, financial pressure, cash flow, fear of layoffs, etc. So for us, communication and support to the employees was key. So in the early days of the pandemic, we were on daily calls. So they were daily 8 o'clock calls with all the general managers across Canada and the US. The communication from that meeting would actually filter down to the department level. So daily calls at each of the departments as well. Weekly town halls from our president and executive teams to keep all members, all of our employees informed. Again, this was key, communication flow to employees. We also had to arm our managers with tools to support our employees. So we held work from home seminars, manager support seminars. How do you recognize employees' anxiety and stress during this period? Employee support seminars. We used service with Morneau Chappelle, who actually hosted these live webcasts. We also launched a virtual healthcare program for our employees. So employees did not physically have to go visit a doctor if they became ill. They could actually do it virtually with a virtual doctor. And on the social side, again, to ease the anxiety and keep them connected, we also launched a dedicated page on our internet. We called it PSG Social. So we had weekly trivia, PSG Fit challenges, book clubs, happy hour, boot camp. We had mindfulness and meditation, which was one of my favorites, coffee chats, etc. So photo galleries, pets of PSG. We actually had prom photos. So just some fun social things to keep our employees connected as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nadia. So we have right now discussed procedures and we've just discussed communications. And sometimes you can have the best procedures in place, right? But how do you, or have you had, maybe you haven't had any issues, but my question that I have is how do you ensure that your employees follow the procedures you've put in place? Especially we're talking about the shop floor, right? We're not talking about so much working from home, but the shop floor is my concern. Does anybody have any insight?
We here haven't had any issues. We made everyone aware when we were implementing them that these were not optional. If you were to continue working in the plant, you needed to follow them. So everyone knew that we were doing this for the safety of all our employees. So it's just if someone forgets, we give them a gentle reminder, but we haven't had any issues with non-compliance here.
Okay, good. Right, I don't see anybody else unmuting themselves, so I'm going to switch over to my next question. So I was thinking, and especially because if you think about it, I mean, statistically proven, predominantly our sign companies are small, right? So, 1 to 10, that's the average sign company. So a single case of COVID could be a small blow to a small company. I mean, a big blow to a small company. Has any of your companies initiated cross-training? Or maybe you've already had that before, but maybe as a result of COVID, have you initiated any cross-training as part of your risk management or risk mitigation strategy?
So I can talk to that one, Corinne. This is part of our overall risk management. So even prior to COVID, we've always, especially on the finance side, we've always had job sharing. So we actually would promote it. So the mandate was from us was that everybody needs to know at least 2 people would have to share a job. So if someone were to leave within a couple of weeks, we'd have somebody that could easily fit in. So it kind of cascaded down to the teams that way.
To know, thanks. Svetlana, I saw, yeah.
For our company, we always had 2 people that would share in the job. And with COVID, I had to step in and take on more responsibility of day-to-day operations as well. But we did have to step up the cross-training for a couple of other employees. So the jobs can be interchangeable. And we were very fortunate with our staff because everybody is always very responsible and never shy away from more responsibilities. So everybody stepped up to the plate and took on more responsibilities.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
For our company as well, just
Yes.
comment on it. We also too try to have the cross training in place prior to anything like this. So we do have a lot of people that can take over. One thing we did notice, however, is even though we have people cross training, when there's a case and people have to get tested, there's a lot of people out at once. So that was one thing we noticed very quickly is although we thought we had all the cross training in place, while people are waiting for test results, they're required to isolate. And that was quite a bit of people. It wasn't necessarily just the affected person. It's a lot more people than just that. So now that's something that we're looking at going forward because potentially we could be having half our employees testing at once and kind of no matter what cross training we have in place, that still knocks out a lot of people. So that's one of those things that we're learning through all of this, and the things that we think we have in place are doing well. It seems like there's always room for improvement.
Well, that's a really good point, Stacy. That's the thing. Like, you might have the best processes, but you know, unfortunately, because it's a pandemic, it doesn't take out one person. But at least some of the processes are in place, so you can improve upon them. So, okay, so discuss this. So next thing is, I would like to ask Svetlana, and so the transitioning to remote work. So Svetlana, you took your entire company from where you went to work, and now you're all remote right now. And I would like to find out more about that. So talk us through the process. What helps you keep organized and productive, you and your team? And what are some tools and software you found useful? And just, yeah, talk us through that.
So nature of our work used to be paper-based. So permitting in most municipalities, we had to submit 3 pounds of paper in the paperless society. And all of a sudden, literally overnight, everything went digital. The problem for us was when you have the paper file-based work, all of a sudden you have no access to the files. We did have an online or electronic system, but we were only saving certain components of the project, not everything that's associated with the project. So we found that quite a challenge. So for the first probably 4 months, I would drive to the people's homes and deliver files, and then we would exchange the files when the project was complete. It was quite cumbersome, and it was very frustrating and challenging. However, we have, after a number of months, we have fully transitioned to the cloud-based system. We implemented a new process in place as to how we save documents, what being saved in the file. So at this point, I'm very happy to say that the transition has been successfully completed. The processes have been worked out and put in place. Again, it still needs some modification. It's always work in progress, but overall, we have a cloud-based system where at any point in time, we can find the information, and we no longer use paper files.
So what do you use, Svetlana?
So we just do everything digitally.
No, but what software?
Oh, okay, so we just have a cloud where we save everything. Also, what we have done is we start using Smartsheet program for project management. We used to have that program just for the tracking component of it, but we have expanded its capabilities and use. So now everything is being tracked in that program. We found it works quite well for our business. We're still learning all the benefits of it. And I'm open to hearing what other people have used and how it worked for them, because it's always a learning experience for us. So Smartsheet has given us quite extensive capabilities for in terms of the project management, how to track the project, what's going on in there, what was communication with municipalities, any history, any discussion, which we can have within the program, which is really nice. And it keeps the conversations between project managers within that project. So if anybody is away for whatever reason, another project manager can step in and know exactly what happened on that particular project. We also have implemented Microsoft Teams, and that program allows us to have chats with each other, and we do have daily phone calls with staff where we keep on top of the workload. We talk about personal things, show off our pets, whatever fun things, just to mix it up. It does help with keeping a human touch component. It's not the best. We do miss being in the office and having our morning coffee with each other, with the group. And considering that we're a small company, we're pretty tight knit as well. So that component is really missing. But unfortunately, due to current situation, it's not prudent for us to return back into the office, even though our office space is quite large and we can maintain 6 feet separation distance. I am concerned about the safety of my employees, so we will continue to work remotely. But that's what we found worked well for us, and we're still learning, and we're still looking for like different ideas. If anybody has to share is what would enhance our situation. But that's what we were able to implement and found that works for our situation anyway.
All right, thanks, Svetlana. Just because I'm looking at the time, I want to get through everything. We'll do maybe some sharing like later on in the tips and tricks. Because we've talked right now about the virtual meetings, I have a question whether, and you also touched on water cooler discussions. Well, you have coffee chats. Has anybody else, because I mean, we can be working from home and we're also separate even when you're in office. Are there any new rituals you've implemented to have that human touch? So Svetlana, you guys do Microsoft Teams and you meet. What is everybody else doing to ensure that you guys are still connecting?
Now, what we do as well, what I try to do is when I phone somebody, instead of calling them, I try to video chat with them. I find it, for me personally, it's a little bit easier to communicate than just on the phone. So I try to encourage the phone conversations with the staff than just regular phone calls.
Okay. Nadia?
Yeah, so our managers make sure we have weekly one-on-ones with all their employees individually. And again, that's key to, you know, detect if there's any kind of anxiety or any personal, on that personal connection. Daily touch points. We have coffee breaks as well. And I mentioned town halls. Is how we stay connected. From a tools perspective, we use Zoom, we use Teams, or we're starting to use Teams, we use Skype, so we already had Skype in place. From a project management perspective, we used M-Files. So we were, with the exception of the AP invoices, we were pretty much digital up before, prior to the pandemic. Our PM team uses M-Files for sharing files. And you know, just again, continuous communication is the key for us.
Okay.
One thing I will add that's really been heightened for Pattison is cybersecurity. Just don't estimate the number of cyber attacks that have happened since the pandemic, especially with people working from home. So that is, we've really heightened the awareness with our staff, having mandatory cyber security training, programs out to them how to detect whether it's a phishing attack or not. So putting protocols in place, because we've seen definitely traffic on the on that risk for sure, on the cybersecurity risk.
I'm going to pop in with an attendee question, and I think this was directed to Svetlana, but could go to anyone, which is how long are your one-on-one chats with your staff?
I don't have a time limit when we chat, so whatever is necessary.
Yeah, for our teams, we make sure that they are blocked on the calendar for at least a minimum of 1 hour. And they're recurring meetings.
Okay, great. So we have another poll question, and especially when we discuss virtual meetings, or sorry, working virtually before COVID, one of the big, not problems of what, hesitations about going virtual and working from remotely is the question of productivity. So we have an audience poll right now about productivity. How would you rate your current productivity? So we know that at least half of you are working from remotely. So are we saying more productive, less productive, same? Okay, we'll give it another 10 seconds. We have 20 people already who responded. A good question, Alexandra. In comparison to when? In comparison to pre-COVID, to before everything changed. It's like BC, before COVID. Okay, so we have right now, let's say 45 seconds. Let's end the poll right now. So right now here is the response. We have 52% of people saying who are more productive. 39%, so same, so that's great, and 9% saying, sorry, 2 people, which is 9% is saying less productive. And I think that's really indicative and in line with the research that it's coming out that's been also published, that people are, in terms of remote work, people do find that they can be either same or even more productive. Great.
Lynn, we have another audience question.
Yeah.
Has anyone else felt the virtual exhaustion every once in a while, and what do you do to combat it?
Can we park this just for a second? This is a really good question. So what we're gonna do is I had a question right now for Stacy, and then we're gonna talk also about mental health, and I think that's where this is going to be really well placed, if that's okay. Okay, just because one thing, and this is breaking barriers, and research shows again and again that COVID is really affecting women a lot, because we're like the first line of, I don't know, it's not defense, but when it comes to childcare or caring for dependents, oftentimes it's the females, as per data, that are being more affected than others. So I did want to discuss balancing work and childcare or care of dependents. And so my question is to Stacy. Stacy, I've had the pleasure of working with you through your work at YPN. You are on the leadership team at the Young Professionals Network. And because of Zoom calls like this, I know that you have a young daughter that I have seen in the background. And so I wanted to ask you about juggling a young kid and work, because you've been working throughout this. How do you do it? And so what have been your biggest lessons learned in the 9 months, and any resources that you can recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was probably the more interesting transition of it all. It's one thing to take your work and do it at home uninterrupted for 8 hours, because then often you feel way more productive because you don't have the distractions of the office. But it was definitely a whole new ball game to have my 5-year-old running around the house all day, needing something or wanting to play or wanting to do things while I had to get work done. I would say one of the biggest benefits through all of this is everyone seems to be in the same position. So I never really had a whole lot of guilt of like, oops, someone can hear her in the background, or someone sees her running by in Zoom, or she comes and says hi, just because there's a lot of people that are either in the same situation or they understand the situation. So that really helped and make the transition really easy for me, is just knowing that there was just understanding everywhere. And I always really appreciated when I saw someone else's kid or heard someone yelling at their kid on the phone, because then I just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, we are all there. We're all in this. It's not just me, it's you too. But So that made that portion really easy. And then I started to right away try to learn and figure out how can we make this work, because I knew it wasn't just a couple weeks, we'll get through this. It's kind of, this is long term. What does this need to look like and how's it going to work? Because maybe short term, quickly turning on the TV for her for a few days to get through it would be an easy solution, but that was not something I necessarily wanted long term for her. So my child loves to keep busy, and I was just trying to find different ways to keep her busy throughout all of this. So I know I had gone into Pinterest and I looked up different crafts and science experiments and worksheets and things that I could have prepared, almost like a little curriculum for her at home to do. So these were things she could look forward to doing each day. It was kind of, oh, am I doing a craft today, or am I doing a science experiment? And they were things that I could essentially help set up for her to do, but then she could do on her own from there, for even if it was like an hour of time. Then I got an hour block of time, which I knew that I could get stuff done. And that was kind of the other transition, is realizing that my workload wasn't necessarily an 8-hour block now. It was kind of little blocks of time in which I'd go, okay, I'm going to hammer down for an hour, and then I need about 15, 20 minutes to either feed her or occupy her or get her set up with something else, and kind of do a check-in to make sure my house wasn't turned completely upside down. But so just kind of restructuring what that time looked like. The other unfortunate part is it ended up kind of extending my days a little bit more. I wasn't necessarily an 8 to 5 o'clock. Now I might have been a 7 to 7, just because I'm not doing a solid 8 hours, and I'm still trying to get my workload done, but I know it has to kind of look a little bit different of when I can get it done. And then just organizing accordingly, knowing that anytime I need to talk to a client, I need to make sure that those happen within regular work hours, and any kind of emails or documentation or communication with other employees could be done maybe outside of those hours, just because there's a little bit more understanding. So kind of looking at my workflow, how does that work? Really staying in communication with my daughter too. Luckily for me, she learned very quickly that if I say I'm on a work call, that means she's quiet or she's doing something. Or if I'm on a Zoom meeting, she's very quiet too. And I know she's kind of already started asking always like, are you on mute? Can people see you? Like, so she's already getting used to that whole concept, which you're kind of going, oh, this is weird, but that is how it is. So keeping my communication with her so that she fully understood, like, okay, I'm on a work call. I'll let you know as soon as I'm off, and we'll do this with you as soon as you're off. We'll color this worksheet, or I'm going to get you a treat as soon as I'm off. Sometimes I would have kind of, if I knew it was a long Zoom meeting, I would kind of have a treat waiting there, and it's like, okay, if you don't bug me, we will have a chocolate bar as soon as it's done. Kind of the award system, whatever kind of worked, whatever we're doing to get through it. It's not ideal situations for them either, for kids just to kind of not be with friends, be ignored per se for hours a day is not ideal for them either. So just trying to make sure that I'm doing what I can to keep her happy and sane, as well as myself. And yeah, kind of almost being employees to each other and keeping that communication going, and making sure that we both always have a clear understanding of what our day is going to look like and how it's going to go. And hopefully we come out at the end of the day happy and successful. But that's kind of the transition that we've been doing, and it's been working, and it's the best it can be. And yeah, there's always changes and things, and there's days that are a lot worse than others, but that just seems to be the nature of the beast.
It's a juggling act for sure. So kudos to you, Stacy, for figuring out Pinterest and science experiments. That's a lot of work, but good job.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, and that's the thing, is you got to put in the time kind of upfront to know that, okay, later this is going to help me. So yeah, you spend a lot of time kind of organizing that stuff, but then I knew, okay, this week is going to actually go fairly smoothly if we can do this all well.
So a lot of
trade-off, right?
A lot of planning. Okay. So we wanted to we wanted to find out about the audience again. So there is another poll question that we have. And so do you have daycare or school-aged kids? Because again, it's not or other dependents you're taking care of at home. And the reason I'm saying dependents is because I had a very good discussion with one of our members and saying, like, kids is not the issue, but I have an elderly parent that I have to, who has health issues. And that really kind of brought it home to me, because that is a huge new gamut of things that we have to, as people, have to deal with. And so, okay, let's look at our audience. Let's give it 5 more seconds. It's a yes or a no option. Okay, so here we are. So we are pretty much split. So we have yes or 9 and no is 11. Okay. Great, thank you. And the reason I wanted to is just because it is a huge issue for some, and others, they don't have to deal with it. My one more question that I had, and this could be a very quick response, is how do you discuss, because some of us have dependents, but some of us here are managers of people who have these dependents. So even if you don't have kids yourself, you have to work with employees or team members who have. So how do you discuss children and childcare or taking care of dependent with your employees or with your managers? Do you have like any experiences how you've had to broach the subject?
So Corinne, I can add to that. So there's an alarming stat that came out from the US a couple of weeks ago, that there's in the US, there's 1 in 4 women that are actually considering leaving the workforce or reducing their hours because of this constant stress that they're under. So I think employers have to take this seriously. So a couple of things that, you know, I tell my teams, and we basically filter it down, is number 1 is provide certainty and clarity. Recognize people can't make daycare changes on, you know, quickly. So they need lead time. So if the expectation is the employees have to come back to the office, you've got to give them ample lead time for that, because they've got to basically work through that and work through, you know, daycare, for example, daycare commitments, etc. The other thing is really right-size job expectations. Okay, you know, recognize people, employees are having this struggle. And the employees, if you recognize that, what our experience has been, they're even more committed to their employers. Okay, so, you know, parent-friendly scheduling policies like compressed work weeks, have them involved in the solution. That it's important that, number 1, we recognize they're having the struggle. Even though they may not always, you know, there's always a stigma with working mothers. You know, we're not always the first ones to put up our hands saying, I'm struggling with this, I can't do this, right? So maybe we need to be more proactive as managers and as employers to recognize that, right? So you initiate that discussion with them, and you work out a plan with the employees. And we also, what we did is we get our team involved. Okay, so how can we help this person out? They can only work 3 days this week. So, you know, offer other employees the opportunity to expend their bandwidth, for example, and foster career development that way. So I think we have to have the open discussion and not ignore that this is a struggle. And it's not just for women, it's also for men who are working from home, because they're picking up a lot of those childcare responsibilities as well. So let's, like, you know, just, it's very stigmatized right now. So, you know, they're reluctant to ask for help. Well, then we need to be proactive and make sure that they're getting what they need.
Thank you, Nadia. You touched on so many really important points, and saying, I mean, it's only for both men and women, and because we're all in the same boat, and really good points. I could really delve into this even deeper, but I need to switch to one more question regarding mental health, because we have 3 questions in the Q&A already, and I do want to honor those questions as well. But I did want to touch on mental health. We're planning a webinar to have a webinar in January on mental health. We're going to discuss that topic in more so in January. But right now, one question, and then we'll go to the Q&A. We're running out of time. So I say, okay, poll, thank you. As we're heading into winter, and I said, I'm channeling my Game of Thrones, winter is coming. In the literal sense, it is really coming. It's going to be cold, and we're going to be more cooped inside. I'm concerned about my own mental well-being and that of my family. So it's a yes, no, or it will be no different than other winters.
And if you're afraid of answering, I promise it's anonymous.
Yeah, there's no way we can see it. Okay, so let's stop the poll. It's yes. There 11, sorry, 48%, 39% is no, and then no different is 3 people, 13%. So I can foresee myself as like, I am kind of scared. We are usually a very active family, and I'm a little anxious going into a winter where it will be less active. So I think it's top of mind. So very quickly, in terms of, this is just gives us a temperature check for everybody. So, but the question to our audience here, to our panelists here, is how does working during a pandemic affect psychological health? And so what can employers or managers, right, do to reduce burnout? Because something that Stacy also mentioned, it's like your workday, because we're virtual and we're juggling things, it wasn't like 8 to 5, right? It's now expanding from 7 to 7. So what can we be doing? And this is not only a week, we're talking about now months. So what could we be doing to reduce burnout? And what have maybe your office has been doing? And you guys can jump in. Ladies, sorry.
So I can share my experience. I did find at the beginning of pandemic, I would be working significantly longer hours because work is always available. So what we have done in our company, we have introduced 4 hours that were significantly reduced from regular office hours. We used to have 8 till 4:30 as regular office hours. We reduced it to 9 till 3 to allow people more flexibility to get their things done. And the employees that I have with the childcare needs, they had more flexibility there as well to do things for that they need personally, and then they can fulfill their workload requirements outside those hours as they see fit. So I had employees who would start at 7 in the morning, and I had employees who would start at 7 at night to accommodate that. Also, to keep mental health in check, we introduced online yoga. We used to do that in the office, and it was a fun, relaxing thing. So now we're doing it online. Not the same, but it does help. And what I have offered as well is in-person meetings one-on-one to the employees who feel they would like to have that. It's a little bit challenging going into the winter to accommodate that because not everybody is comfortable in letting other people into their homes, but I'm not opposed in sitting in my car in the trunk and just having a chat outside and having a coffee. So that's what we're trying currently in our company.
Okay, thank you, Svetlana.
One thing that we're doing, we have a morning kickoff meeting. I mentioned that earlier. So we start off our meeting with stretching. So everybody, getting loose, doing a few stretching, and then we proceed to, do a reminder about our COVID protocols. And then that's an opportunity for anybody to voice any concerns they may have as well. Or, if they're feeling stressed about something, that's a good spot for somebody to be able to address something with the whole team, or they can come to you afterwards and address it too. It's communication really needs to be the biggest thing that we have found, that, be a sounding board, or, go make sure you're ask the questions. How are you doing? Do you have any concerns? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I know for myself, the big thing was just really finding that division between work and home, because especially when we are working at home, it's easy for it all to kind of blend together. You don't really have a stop. You don't really have a start. It's not like you're getting in the car and going to the office and now my day starts, and you go home and now my day ends. So trying to find ways to really establish, like in the mornings, it's a matter of, okay, you are getting out of sweatpants and you are getting dressed and you are getting ready, even though no one's going to see you, to have that kind of mentality of, I'm getting ready for the day, my day's starting now. And then at the end of the day, doing different things to kind of, again, have a clear cut to that day, whether it's shutting everything down completely, not just walking away from the computer because it's way too easy to kind of do a little circle back and quickly check the email. So actually shutting it down. Or when it was nicer outside, I made a point to go outside and play and do something to go, okay, my day is over now, get my brain out of that mentality and do something else. Here in Manitoba, our winters get a little cold for that. So I have to decide if that's still going to be a tactic. I mean, it may be a very good way to shut me out of work and get ready to move on to something else. But just kind of having that clear division and knowing that that's kind of my trigger of this is what's now separating my day to continue on, because even just the little stressful things of you're constantly either thinking of an email, you're thinking of a job, that still is there, and it carries on a lot more easier when you don't have that division of a drive home from the office or whatever that may be. So trying to get those little kind of points and know what those are and make sure that I'm doing them to go, okay, this is the start of my day and this is the end of my day, so that everything does not all blend together as one and just becomes exhausting on both aspects. Exhausting being a mom, exhausted being a wife, exhausted being a worker. So when it all blends together, you get exhausted being everything. So just making sure they all kind of stay in their compartments so I can be my best self for all those compartments is a challenge, but it's definitely something that I try to do.
Really good advice. Thank you, Stacy. All right, we're at like 101 or overtime. So I was wondering, so I know that some of you will have to step off. I was wondering if I can ask panelists to stay on for another 5 minutes so we can get to some of the 3 Q&As, because questions that were received. Would that be all right with you? All right, so thank you. Hillary, do you want to do the Q&A?
Yes, so I'm going to repeat the one that came in a little earlier, which is, has anybody else felt the virtual exhaustion every once in a while, and how do you combat it?
I'd say Stacy has kind of touched on that in terms of how like it's being very restricting, closing.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who wants to chime in, or Stacy, if you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, I know for myself, I kind of found the virtual stuff almost replaced like my phone calls. So although I go through days at work in the office where I felt like, oh, I've had so many phone calls, I've talked to so many people, I've kind of felt like the virtual has now replaced that. So now instead of as many meetings and phone calls, I kind of feel like now it's like the Zoom meetings and the webinars and all that stuff. So I've tried to, in my head, so that they don't seem as exhausting, make it seem like I've just switched some things out. So maybe I'm not doing phone calls as much anymore, or I'm not having in-person meetings as much. Now I'm doing Zoom calls instead. So I know that's helped me a little bit, is to kind of go, okay, what am I doing? I'm not doing this anymore, but I am doing more of this. So it doesn't seem like more is being added to my plate, but it's just kind of, this is now the new way to do it than what I was doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, in the early days, I found I was sitting at my desk on a chair, not moving from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock. And, you know, you kind of do that for a couple of weeks and you're basically, you know, burnout and you're exhausted. So I started to actually block my lunch hours on the calendar and, you know, get up, go outside, go for walks, take some time, whether it's in the morning, block your time every day, block at least an hour to an hour and a half. So that way there's no meetings that are being scheduled, because you've got to get, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to just sit down and read, you want to go for a walk outside, you want to do a yoga class at lunchtime, you've really got to block that time, because otherwise it's a continuous, I found it was a continuous day throughout the whole week. It didn't stop. So I think just blocking that time and making that commitment to oneself is important.
Good point. Thank you, Nadia. Hillary, let's hop to the next question.
Question to owners, managers. If your teams were office-based before COVID, how has the current WFM model changed your perspective on employee productivity? And does the productivity poll result we saw align with your company's actual experience?
So work from home model, yeah.
So in my experience, all of my employees are very dedicated and responsible. I found that our productivity, I don't have any issues with that. All the projects get done in a timely manner. So for us, it's been very good. I do hear feedback from my employees that it's hard to step away from the workstation, and they end up actually working longer I try to remind them that they should stop. So if they're sending me messages after hours, I just say, stop doing it. Go live your life. So for us, it's by the nature of my employees, we never had an issue.
All right. And let's go to the last question.
You bet. How are your companies measuring productivity and ensuring those employees who are single or without dependents and are able to work 8 to 10 hour blocks remotely, are not forced to pick up extra workload without compensation?
I know for ourselves, we've been very fortunate that this hasn't really been an issue in our office. We have a great team of employees that everyone trusts. We've been kind of seeing that things are moving along as normal. We haven't had any issues come up. No one has expressed any concerns. So for us, I can't really speak to it just because we have been very fortunate that everyone is just willing to kind of do their jobs, get it done, and be understanding that their workload may now look slightly different than someone else's, but everyone's still working together as a team, and the end goal is still the same, that we want to be successful and we want to get stuff done. So.
All right. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a huge balancing act. Whichever way we dice it, we need to be all cognizant that, you know, there was one saying that, and this is gonna be my parting comment, like, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same ship. And so, and you don't know what everybody's ship is always like, and this could be just for yourself or your company as well. So just be kind to each other, right? And like Stacy said, like, I mean, especially within companies and sign companies, it's like it's a team effort, right? So everybody tries wherever they can to, if a ball is falling, you pick up the ball and help juggle them the best we can. So because we're 8 minutes over time, and I try to kind of have it fit right into an hour, but there's so much to discuss. So Svetlana, Nadia, Elizabeth, Stacy, thank you so much for your time today, your insight, for, you know, sharing your experiences with you. Hillary, thank you for managing this all. If you have any questions for our attendees, please do send them to us. We will, like I mentioned, share the video with you afterwards, and some of the tools that were mentioned. And I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. Stay strong, and hopefully we'll see you at our future sessions. So without further ado, have a great day. Bye.